When you walk into a basement and you're trying to assess just how much water that they have, and you think, okay, I know what to do. I have the right type of waterproofing system for this particular type of foundation. And then lots of different things can happen. You think you have your floor sitting on top of the footing, and you have your floor on top of the footing, but also really thick right up against the side of the footing. When you run into these different types of scenarios, other types of waterproofing systems just couldn't fix this particular type of problem. When you get those scenarios, curveballs thrown at you, you have to be able to adapt with your waterproofing system. You got to be able to customize it and change it. We have a footing. Instead of being 4 inches wide, which normal footings are, which would be about as wide as my foot, we got one that's a little over 10 inches here. And then as we moved this way, the footing expands out to about 14 inches wide there. So you have to adapt and customize every inch. Other systems just can't do that. We do it without missing stride. We're able to do it just as our normal course of action and dial in and have the system exactly 10 inches here, 14 inches there, and we're back over here to where it's 8 and 9 inches going back and forth where you can see it jogs out. When you get over to this half of the basement, you got a whole nother scenario going on as far as the width of the footing. It goes from being that in the neighborhood of about 10 inches wide here to spanning out to you have an area of footing that's over 18 inches wide here. Now we're going to be setting up a drain board, it's called flow channel, that covers the top of the entire footing all the way around the foundation. You have to be able to set that drain board up to manage the water because you can see the size of our trench here. Water comes underneath the wall, travels across the footing, but you got to manage that water down within the depth of the footing. So that's where that whole drain board thing comes in. So if it's 10 inches in one place, 14 inches in another place, and then you have 18 inches here, and you're able to completely customize your system to fit each one of those different scenarios, you're able to put in a totally, completely effective waterproofing system, especially when you match it up with your drainage in the right area. So in other words, if you have your drainage down here within the depth of the footing, that water is going to go over and go down there. Other types of systems, they come over, there is no drainage. There's no drainage below the top of the footing. So all that water goes in and just floods the whole area underneath your floor. And then what happens, it fills up around your floor. And when your floor sits in water, concrete's porous. It acts like a slow sponge. The floor absorbs that water. So this floor is soaking wet. There was a ton of water in this particular basement. This particular customer had 4 different companies come out and give estimates. And for how much water they had, they couldn't figure out how the other ways that were explained to them would ever get rid of their water problem. There were different, one of them is a system that sits on top of the footing here. They're thinking, with the amount of water that we have, how is that ever going to be able to handle it? Well, the answer was it can't, and it wouldn't have. Because when water comes in, it bypasses this. You got a lip right here, so the water bypasses it and floods the area until it fills up on the outside of here. And then the water would backflow underneath to get through these little holes. And it's kind of an overflow system into a sump basket and then pump the water up out away from the house. You got to remember, with this system, with this type of system, there is no drainage down here. There's no drainage within the depth of the footing. That's where you got to manage the water. If you manage it here, you got a dry floor. You got a dry floor, you've solved your entire problem. This has to have the water fill up here before anything can actually get into it. And then the problem is, when you re-cement the floor, you don't have a thick enough floor to be code compliant. Perfect example is, this is so peculiar. If you look here, it's nice and flush. That means it was up against the poured concrete wall. So we'll replace it. So that sat there, and this particular foundation had a crack running right along the floor about 10 inches out, and then it actually branched out a little bit more, depending on how wide the footing was. So before we started to remove the floor, we thought, wow, that's kind of odd. Well, it turned out it's much thinner floor than a normal concrete floor, which would be about that thick, 4 inches. But as we came out and removed this piece of floor, we found this thing butted up right against the side of the footing. And if you look, that's smooth there and was down just like this. So this matched up against there, and then had the thinner part of the floor go across the footing and butt up against there. Now that that scenario is set, you have people coming in that are giving you an estimate that are saying, oh, we're going to take your floor off of the footing, so they remove this out, and we're going to put our gutter thing right here. They put a little bit of stone right here, and then re-cement back over on top of it. Let's put this back to see how that matches up. Not really a good match. If you can see, you have to put so much floor back. With this particular type of system, there's no place to put any floor back. Plus, you're going to be taking the floor out. The water has to fill up this high, so you're this close to having it being on top of the floor. I keep talking about, you got to make sure you get the right waterproofing system for your particular type of foundation. And this is absolutely not the right one for this type of foundation. If you've liked the video, please subscribe and hit the bell, and that'll notify you when our future videos are coming out. And thanks for watching.